Hello, and welcome to another edition of On the Town. On the Town is a series of interviews with leaders who are helping to make Southbury a great place to live, raise a family, own a business, and retire. My name is Ed Edelson, and I'm your host. Today, our guest is Bruce Martin, the co-founder of the very popular Blues Cafe, which, as Bruce says, is neither about the blues nor is it a cafe. Bruce has established himself as a leading promoter of Americana music here in New England. Bruce, welcome to On the Town.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking some time to stop by, talk about some of your recent activities and how you got involved in this, what I call your second passion.
My second passion.
Right, tennis being your first, I think,
Yeah.
and so far you have not yet combined the two to happen at the same time.
No.
But when that happens, we'll have you back for that. But let's begin with what is the Blues Cafe and how did this idea evolve in the first place?
It started out as a house concert in my basement in Sandy Hook. I was going up to Northampton. I had met Pete Kennedy, and I was taking intermediate guitar lessons up there. I would make that trip once a month. And I had the basement redone, and I said to Pete, how about a guitar workshop in Sandy Hook? He says, well, what about a house concert? I said, okay, talk to me. What do you mean? What's this all about? And fortunately, my daughter was doing DJ in high school, so we had some equipment, and he explained it. And so we did our first house concert in Sandy Hook basement with Pete Moore and Kennedy. I got hooked. And they introduced me to a lot of other people, so we started doing a series there.
And how many years ago was that? Or
That's over 10 years ago.
Okay.
I took a little hiatus for a while. Then I moved to Southbury. I got a email from Tracy Grammer, somebody who we had worked with, and she said, Bruce, I'm looking for something to do with Jim Henry. What do you have? And I said, Tracy, I have nothing, but give me a couple of weeks. And I went and approached the VFW, and we talked and a deal, and so that's how we got started 5 years ago in Southbury, at the VFW.
And the VFW is a building down in Lakeside, a beautiful site there right along Lake Zor, but you're inside. Now, you, as I jokingly said, and you've said, there's not much in the way of blues. You're not going to see B.B. King kind of music there. Or, well, who knows, maybe sometime in the future.
Sometimes it's not ruled out. We, as you mentioned, use the word Americana music. Some people refer to it as singer-songwriter. And Americana music is taking a hold as a name to give what this is, this roots music. In fact, there's a organization out of Nashville now that actually is Americana music, and they actually have awards and ceremonies, much like Grammys and everything. Okay. I was watching that the other day, and a couple of people that were on that show getting awards actually appeared at the Blues Cafe. So it's this umbrella that embraces a lot of music that includes bluegrass, folk music, country, traditional Appalachian music. So it's an overall umbrella that embraces it all. You know what bluegrass is, yet people that are Americana fans would like bluegrass, but not everybody in bluegrass likes all of Americana.
You know, if you don't mind, I think about when I was young, I got 8 crayons. You got a box of crayons that had 8 colors. They were all distinct. And then all of a sudden you got 32 and then 64.
Yeah. And
that's the way it is with music. We have these categories we've had growing up, but over time they blend.
They blend.
And so, they become something a little newer when they do, and that's what you're, I think, seeing with this Americana.
I think what you're
that
seeing
blending.
Is that blending, and developing it, and then you look back, like you said, the music we grew up with, and you say, wow, I didn't realize the Byrds were Americana when they came out with their Sweethearts of the Rodeo album. It was all country. Graham Parsons, Americana. The Beatles, a lot of the music has rolled into Americana.
Right. So, but I know one of the organizations you're very involved with, the Northeast Folk.
Northeast
Regional Folk.
Lines.
So they still have that old term of folk, but I think when you go there, it's Americana.
It's Americana.
But it's the name of that event, if you will, is precedes the term Americana.
Yes.
So they held on to it.
Yes, because there's equity there. There's a group of us in Connecticut that are trying to promote Americana music. We've been very successful at the Blues Cafe, Voices Cafe in Westport, CT Folk in Connecticut, and we're kind of discussing how do we attract people who have this association of folk music, and it's probably, let's just say, let's be honest, it's not the music that they necessarily care for, yet it's a disservice because it's beyond folk, you know, and we're trying to attract people that really aren't folkies but want to come out and listen to, and here's the key, live music.
Right. Very much so. But I just want to stay with the folk term for a second, which I think you have found with younger people might be a turnoff.
Yes.
Folk is like, oh, that's something, you know, it's not modern, it's not what I'm living with today. Right. That's my grandparents' music.
It's campfire music. It's Froggy,
right.
One Accord. And
exactly. One of my favorites. But anyway, but I think that's the idea of, in any art form, there's an evolution and it builds on what's there before. But since we did bring up NERFA, maybe you want to talk about what that is and how you found that to be very helpful.
Sure. I was told about NERFA from Ethan Bear from Pesky J. Nixon. He said, Bruce, you need to be there. And what it is, it's an amazing 3-day event in Stamford. It's a gathering of 750 musicians, all at the Crown Plaza. It's networking. You'll find yourself sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning sitting in a hotel room, listening to an artists like Abby Gardner, Tom Rush, Tom Paxton. It's just amazing. And here you are in a room with 10 people, and yes, the bed and one chair,
right.
And people gathering to listen to this music. And it's a great networking opportunity for the artists and the presenters.
And I think that speaks to the number of new venues. So these artists, even like somebody like Tom Rush, I mean, that's a name that's been out there for decades. But he's still finding it's helpful, I assume, helpful to meet new people, to find new venues where he can bring his music somewhere else.
Like Tom Paxton, I was actually sitting next to him, not realizing it one time. And they're mentoring the people, and they're bringing the music on. They're not looking for gigs so much, but it's they're mentoring and passing the music on. Peter Arrow was a keynote speaker this year from Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Okay.
So I would say they're not there looking for gigs. They're there to preserve and pass on the music, but also to grow it too.
You know, you bring up a name like Peter Yarrow. All of a sudden, I was thinking about the Newport Folk Festival, and you know, it's legend about how angry Pete Seeger was. How many people were so angry when Bob Dylan brought electrical music out there? But again, he was evolving. Are there people who resent Americana as a term? And say, no, we won't, we're purists, or you're not seeing that kind of, you're either on one side of this musical divide or on the other?
No, that's a great question. I think the resistance to Americana music per se is to actually try and understand what it is.
Okay.
You know, some people like the word singer-songwriters to refer to this music. Other people use roots music.
Okay.
So there's different labels for the same thing. Getting back to your example of the crayon, I know what black is, you know, I know that, but yet it's beyond that. So what do you call this big box of crayons?
Right.
You know, and so I know what bluegrass is, but when it's part of Americana, well, is that a fair word to describe some of the bluegrass music? And that's where you can find separation.
Right. Well, there's always be some traditionalists.
Yeah, say it's folk.
You know, and say, right, and it can't evolve, it's got to be right there. But, I mean, the thing that I find amazing is the quality of the musicianship. And a lot of times when I think of older folk music, it was strumming, but the guitar work that we see, and all the instruments that people come to the Blues Cafe and play, the musicianship is way out there. And I'm not even talking about the lyrics, just the musicianship.
The musicianship is outstanding. And we've had people who have, we had Mark Corelli in our basement who played on the same stage at Prince Royal Albert Hall as the Beatles. Pete Kennedy has been on the stage with some of the best performers. I've seen on stage with Bill Kirchner, who was the lead guitar player for Commander Cody, Glenn Campbell, and as you've seen and witnessed, there is truly outstanding talent out there.
And what you do, which is, we're not going to talk too much about your musicianship, but I know that you play and enjoy being part
Thank
of
you for that.
the house band. Now I forgot where I was going. But these folks, it's folks like you who are really stepping up to create venues for them. And that is such an important part of this, because you can be a great musician in your basement, but without people like yourself who are willing to get the venue, get the sound equipment, do the marketing to get an audience there, they'll just be in their basement playing music to themselves.
That's a great point. I wondered myself 3 years ago what impact I was having, and there was a theme at Falcon Ridge, which maybe we should talk about shortly, where this venues of house concerts, small venues, is really the lifeblood to these musicians, because they're not playing Excel Infinity Center. You might get Mumford & Son, but they're playing small venues, and they live on this. They're doing 150 to 200 gigs a year, and most of them are house concerts and small venues.
And I think there's a group of that you've tapped into, an audience who prefers that. The intimacy, that you're right there with the performers. You can interact with them either while they're playing sometimes, or definitely between sets. And to some people, that's a lot better than sitting 28 rows back. And I can sort of see his eyes, or her eyes.
You go to some of the big bands that are still like the Eagles, you might be sitting way in the back and watching them on the big screen. I think it's a matter of taste and preference. I gravitate towards small venues so they can have that intimacy and get to know the artist.
Now, maybe we can mention a couple of these venues. Now, you mentioned NERFA, which is just a great place to see, or for people like yourself. It's not really for someone like myself. I would be kind of lost in space, but there are these other 2-day, 3-day festivals, which are an exciting opportunity to see people perform. You mentioned Falcon Ridge. You want to mention a word or two of what that's all about?
Falcon Ridge is run, it's like 30 years now. It's in Hillsdale, New York, which is about 2 years. It's a 3-day event. Actually, you can get there on Thursday. There's a great ad hoc thing called The Lounge, where a lot of these artists actually perform. That's where I see a lot of people too.
Okay. I think it's 2 hours. I think you said 2 years, but 2 hours.
I apologize. 2 hours away. Not 2 years away. 2 hours away, right straight up 22. And Ann Saunders runs it. Ann Saunders is a big patron of the Blues Cafe. She comes there. And they bring in singer-songwriters. And the music goes from 11 o'clock to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You have campfires in the back where people are performing. Red Molly, that's where they hooked up. They started at Falcon Ridge back in the campsite.
Right. Well, that's another exciting thing about these festivals, when so many new groups sort of form. People hear each other, they want to jam together.
They
say, wow, that was an interesting sound, and off they go, and something is created.
A lot of the main acts actually will go into the back at night and play with the people, too.
Okay.
And we have Black Bear that just got started in Goshen, Connecticut, which is not 2 years away.
Only one.
Only one. But it's 45 minutes away up in Goshen, and it's second year, and they had a very successful second year.
And in addition to that, there are other venues, much like what you've done with the Blues Cafe. Some older than the Blues Cafe. I mean, I think Voices Cafe goes way back.
No, Voices, actually, I helped them get started. I was approached at...
corrected.
Voices Cafe. Dave Kaplan came to me at Falcon Ridge and picked my brain a little bit because he wanted to get something started in Westport. CT Folk goes way back.
Okay.
And they do a series, and that precedes me by many years.
But and one of the things we'll advise here is you might want to get on Bruce's mailing list, because those two that you mentioned are literally, a half hour, 45 minutes. But if you draw a circle like an hour and a half around, you will find throughout the year many small venues in New York State, Lower Massachusetts, that are really accessible to us. So there's always music.
There's always good live music within a reasonable distance.
So when people say there's nothing to do here, they just need to contact Bruce. You will find out there's plenty to do.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think has been interesting for you is getting to meet some of these performers and understand a little bit more of what drives them. These are not people who are going to retire on a yacht in the Caribbean, but music is important to them.
Music is as Maura Kennedy once told me. She was, Bruce, we do okay. We live a very modest lifestyle, but I'm living my dream. And that's what it really is. They're living their dream.
And it's, that the need for the audience. I mean, it is a symbiotic relationship. They need the audience, and I feel a lot of audiences that need the good quality of hearing live music.
Live music.
And some people might wonder, hey, you can get a CD or you can listen on Spotify, as much music as you want. But there's something, maybe you can describe it, but there's something special about live music.
I think that's the audience that these venues are trying to move towards, is get people out there who want to hear live music, and it's better than staying home and watching television. And you use the word accessible, and it's reasonably priced, and it's a win-win for a lot of people.
Okay, so maybe let's just talk about some things coming up at the Blues Cafe in the next couple of months.
Sure. Our next show is February 9th with a gentleman by the name of Greg Greenway. I've known Greg. He was part of Brother's Son. He was also part of Deeper Than the Skin with Reggie Harris, that performed at Sarah Cook Hall.
In the Village,
Yep, and I know you're personal friends of Greg too. I
love his music.
Outstanding musician, outstanding songwriter, plays keyboards and guitar, and I think his voice is an instrument too. That's very important. Following that, in April, we have Bettman and Halpin, who are returning. They're coming from Colorado, and again, there's an example of somebody playing the Blues Cafe and wanting to come back. And the reason why they want to come back is it's a great listening room for the people. And we have a great audience that does the potluck, listens to our house band, but sits down and then absorbs the music.
And after them, is there one more?
Then we take a little bit of a hiatus. We'll have Brooks in October, but gets into, we'll segue for a second, that we have a sister series now called The Barn, which is hosted by Betsy and John D. Meyer of Southbury. It's a spin-off, kind of, and it has 50 people in there bringing Goodnight Moonshine in June, and Jeffrey Pepper Rogers, who's an editor of Cusick Guitar Magazine, is going to do a Grateful Dead tribute with a Grateful Dead guitar workshop in the afternoon.
Yeah. And you, just a little sidetrack, so Grateful Dead, from your point of view, is part of Americana. Some people might say, well, no, that's, I don't know if anybody would say acid rock, but they would say rock, because of coming out of San Francisco and all of that. But
if you go back to Working Man's Dead and American Beauty, I think, it was a lot of bluegrass in it, in fact, if I can, real story, in his autobiography, Dark Star, Jerry Garcia is quoted as saying, "I wish I played banjo as fast as Roger Sprung." And Roger is a local and a world-class banjo player, and actually got me started
over in Sandy Hook.
In Sandy Hook.
I think you mentioned once he had a series over there at the pizza parlor. Or?
Yeah, that's how I came across this music. Lived about a mile away from where this jam was going on. Didn't know anything about it. I went to it, and Roger played two songs that I absolutely fell in love with. I introduced myself to Roger. I said, Roger, those two songs, what were they? And he said, Here in California, which is a Kate Wolf song, and Going Gone, which is a Nancy Griffith song. And as luck turned out, I went to see the Everly Brothers, and who opened up with Nancy, and I got hooked on the music.
Okay. I need more. I need more.
I need more.
Now you kind of went through it quickly, but describe a typical afternoon at the Blues Cafe, how
Sure.
it's structured a little bit, so people who haven't been there have an idea of what to expect.
You know, and thank you for that. That's a great question. When I started the Blues Cafe, I had this idea. I knew better what I didn't want to do than what I wanted to do. And what I did want to do is just be a concert, have people come in, sit down, 45 minutes set, and leave. There were a lot of other venues doing that. We had the experience of the house concert, the intimacy. So somehow I wanted to preserve that. So we've honed it, but what we do basically is we open the doors at 1. We have a potluck that's amazing. People are amazing. We could talk about that's the story in itself.
Okay.
And we have a house band, and we invite some people to come in and be the lead, and the house band, back them up. So we had Jim Pine, a local here.
Right. A villager.
Yep, a villager. We're going to have Barbara Meckler, a villager, lead on the next song. She's going to do a Bettman Halpin song. So it's coming around. And we do that, and then at 2:30 we close down for a half hour to set up the main act. And we've been really religious about staying on time because we're getting a real good crowd, and we feel that we need to be professional about it. So we have the potluck, the house band, the locals, stop, set up, 3 o'clock, main act, and it's an enjoyable day.
And how many years have you been at the VFW now?
We just concluded our 5th year.
Okay. And I think if people go, you will see there's kind of a regular crowd. I feel like Billy Joel, a regular crowd shuffles in.
Well,
and they come, to be quite honest, because of you, that you've told them, two things. They trust you, and because of the internet, they can go and check out, well, who is this group? I never heard of them before.
Yeah, it was Cindy and I have worked hard to build that trust, because the best thing that we can get is to have people want to come back. Mm-hmm. Networking and giving the people the reason to want to come back is so important. And as you said, if we get 100 people for a new act, I would say that 90 people have no idea of who they're seeing, but they've come to enjoy the experience and trust the quality of the music they're seeing.
Well, I think it's a real testament to what you and Cindy have done, and you should feel very proud of that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That's important to us.
Well, yes. I mean, you do use that term a lot about building community and within the Blues Cafe. But the other thing that I feel, especially this holiday time of year, I hope I'm not going to sound too silly, but one of my favorite movies is A Miracle on 34th Street. Mm-hmm. Where Macy's realizes, we should promote all the stores.
I love that movie. I love yep.
And you do that when you come to the Blues Cafe. Not only are you going to hear that music and hear what's coming up at the Blues Cafe, but you try there to highlight all the other venues that are similar. Again, this Americana music. And I'm going to ask you in a second to mention those. But I really believe, as I've said to you, the whole idea of a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's happening with the folk community here in Connecticut.
It really is. I would say it started with us, and now it's taken on, and Voices Cafe, CT Folk, Barbara Schiller, even Sounding Board now. We're all part of the same team, and we're all promoting each other, and it's good for the artists, it's good for the community, it's good for the music.
And I would like you to mention there's a sister organization up here in Woodbury at New Morning Market. Mm-hmm. You might want to say a word or two about.
Sure. Doug Mahard and Mitch Katz do a series up at Woodbury. Singer-songwriters in the round, and they'll have 4 people, and they will swap songs. And they get local singer-songwriters and professional singer-songwriters. It's a mixed bag. It's a really nice night. It's, I believe, the last Saturday of the month. It's held at New Morning Market on the upstairs, and it's a reasonable commute for Southbury people, and it's a nice thing.
Very nice thing, and again, it has a nice spirit to it, and I think they've done well also in terms of a regular crowd shuffles in.
It's the community, because we're all realizing it's the community that there is no sound of the forest if there's no community in the room.
Right. And
I like that one. I'm gonna write that down.
That's why we record these things. Well, Bruce, as I think we haven't mentioned, your typical price is $20.
Mm-hmm.
People want more information. You have the Blues Cafe website, and we'll put that on the screen, as well as your email address that they should feel free to write you if they're interested in being on your mailing list.
Yep.
And do you want to say a word about how you make a reservation?
It's reservations are made by just letting me know you'd like to reserve 2 seats. We don't take money in advance. It's basically the honor system. If you say you're coming, we put down a reservation. I do it because we have limited seating. We don't have unlimited seating, so we use the reservations to gauge when we are maxed out. And if somebody can't make it, it's a simple courtesy email saying, "Bruce, the plumbing broke," and we've gotten those. But we ask people to reserve in advance. It is limited seating.
Right.
And if I may, the donation of $20, we pay for the hall, we pay for the sound, but the rest of the money proceeds go to the artist.
Right. And so Bruce and his partner Cindy basically do this out of the goodness of their heart. And I know you get a lot of joy out of it, but a lot of other people benefit from your generosity. Yeah. So anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, you want to mention some of the things that are going on at the other places that are coming up?
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Just as an example, Voices Cafe. They will have Vance Gilbert coming up in January. And in March, the Black Feathers. I know Vance and I know the Black Feathers. Mm-hmm. At CT Folk, they have Hitchin' and Giddy Up coming up in January, I believe. That will feature a local band. Dan Carlucci, I believe, is from Newtown. I've met Dan, but I don't know him that well. And then haven't talked about Sounding Board. They have Laura Herskovich coming up in February.
And I'm sorry, Sounding Board, where is that?
Sounding Board's in West Hartford. You find out that a lot of them are in either Unitarian churches or Presbyterian churches, or halls, but
right.
We find a home.
It's the new religion. This is Americana religion.
Right?
I don't
And we're also starting, we didn't mention, we got involved with a third series that we're involved with, Acts 4.
Oh yes, in Waterbury.
I've been doing volunteer work for Acts 4, who serve as people in transition is the best way to explain that. But they turned the thrift store into a coffee house, and we've had the Kennedys, Brooks Williams, Milton there, and we just did a show with the Kennedys, who felt so moved by the whole experience and want to be part of it that they emailed Sarah, the executive director, said, "Book us for next year again, December 10th, 2020." And that's this whole thing. It just gets started, and people, and music moves people.
Well, been doing that for a millennium. So, all right. Well, again, you can see from this list, there is no paucity of opportunities to hear live music that's accessible, both in terms of distance and money. That these are very affordable and a great way to spend an evening or an afternoon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bruce, I want to thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me the
congratulations
opportunity.
on the success of Blues Cafe.
Thank you very much. And we, again, would love to see other members of the village especially come out and check it out.
Okay, that's a good Sunday afternoon to say the least. Well, thank you all for watching this edition of On the Town, and please stay tuned to future editions. We'll have other leaders who are helping to make Southbury a great place to live.